Now, I know that you have already been able to purchase a Christmas Bluey blow-up set at Costco for about 3 months now. But I think we can say that since Thanksgiving has passed, the holidays are officially upon us. Does anyone else feel that way? Now, we got our Christmas tree yesterday right out here at the grocery outlet parking lot. It's a fundraiser for L'Arche, an intentional community where people with and without intellectual disabilities share life together. Highly recommend L'Arche as an organization and their trees. But that's just the beginning, right? The tree is just the beginning. Now it's time to bake the Christmas cookies and listen to the Christmas music and go to all the Christmas events and all the Christmas concerts, and of course, this is most important, watch the Christmas movies. Now, I wonder if any of you have holiday movies that you watch every year. You want to shout them out? What do you got? It's a Wonderful Life, classic choice. Elf. What'd you got? Elf? White Christmas. Charlie Brown Christmas. Yes, I think those are all great, right? I like to hit up at least once per season the Muppet Christmas Carol, a classic, and most of the Harry Potter movies. Anybody? I feel like those are Christmas.
Don't forget Christmas Story.
The Christmas Story, yes, another classic. Now, I realized, and I was thinking about this, and I was like, oh yeah, almost time to watch the Muppet Christmas Carol. It's a comfortable feeling, isn't it, to watch those things that we've watched so many times before. Like we know what to expect, you know? And it feels right, like we see it and we think, yes, that's the story. That's how it's supposed to go. Do you like that feeling? I really like that feeling. In fact, I recently had a little bit of a revelation, which is that feeling, this kind of familiar story feeling, is kind of what I have been chasing during Advent for most of my preaching career. I've kind of been into this, let's stick to the well-worn paths of the baby in the manger trope, right, for all my Advent. And I know there's always some table setting before we get to that, which is what the first few weeks of Advent are for. But the babies and the angels and the shepherds, right, that's really the main event for me all these years. But I recently had an epiphany that I may have been missing something pretty significant. So I'll tell you that while attending a preaching workshop at Mount Tabor Presbyterian Church a few months ago, some faculty, preaching faculty, who were there from Columbia Theological Seminary in Georgia, invited us to grapple with one of the theological ideas that's at the heart of Advent, and that is eschatology. Everybody say eschatology. All right, eschatology. And actually they had a quote from another preaching professor that said, under no circumstances should you use the word eschatology in your sermon. Just turn everybody off, they'll go to sleep. But I feel like we're better than that. Eschatology comes from the Greek word eschatos, meaning last, and it essentially means the study of the last things. It's a theological discipline particularly concerned with the eventual conclusion of the human divine story. So colloquially, you could say eschatology tries to answer the question, how's this all going to end? How is this all going to end? And so eschatology is actually, yes, a significant motif in the season of Advent. If you are really reading any of the texts that are assigned for this block of time, many of them present an eschatological perspective. But you know, I realized in the course of listening to this professor that I've been avoiding this for about 16 years that I've been preaching every Advent. I've always felt kind of suspicious of it. I was taught that the reason these texts are included in Advent was because as we remember the birth of Jesus, we're also supposed to look forward to Jesus' triumphant return. Did anybody else learn that? Jesus triumphant, you have to say it like that, triumphant return. And I have to be honest, I was never that comfortable with that. In my experience, the matter of Jesus coming back was the purview of mostly fundamentalist Christians I knew, whose vision of this return was pretty speculative and also pretty vengeful and pretty exclusive. And I just didn't feel like I had a lot of interest in that. So I stuck mostly with spending my Advents thinking back into the events around Jesus' birth all those years ago and avoiding pretty much the invitation to think forward about the implications of that birth for the future. But recently I've started thinking a little bit differently, and I'm wondering if this morning I just take a few minutes to bring you on that journey with me, because I've come around to thinking that maybe eschatology is key to a fruitful Advent journey. It just depends on how we think about it. But first I need to take a little digression. Maybe you know that for a long time there's been this debate going on in popular culture about whether or not the action movie Die Hard is in fact a Christmas movie. It's important that we speak from the pulpit about real things in the modern day. So they say. So if you're unfamiliar, Die Hard, released in 1988, features Bruce Willis as an off-duty cop who ends up in a hostage situation in an LA high-rise and has to fight his way out of it and save everyone from the terrorists. Classic action movie setup. But as it so happens, the events of Die Hard happen to take place on Christmas Eve. And a lot of the soundtrack is Christian music. And because one of the hostages is Willis's estranged ex-wife, the theme of family reconciliation during the holidays is central to the plot of the movie. So, is it a Christmas movie or not? This is an important question about genre. And I think it is also true that the question about eschatology is a question about genre. Now, the Bible talks a lot about how this is all going to end. If you read the prophets, if you read anything in Kings, if you read the book of Revelation, it talks a lot about how this is all going to end. It seems like especially during the times when people were going through real strife and struggle, they generated a lot of hope, thinking about what things were going to look like once that struggle had resolved. And I think we tend to read that material as being predictive in genre, like it's a statement about what's going to happen, like a weather report. It's probably going to rain today at 3 p.m., and it's probably going to be really peaceful in the end. But really, I think it's a bit more functional to think of this genre of writing as something more like fantasy writing. It's not predictive as much as it is imaginative. What could it be like? What will it be like? What would it look like if we didn't have war anymore? What would it be like if the wisdom we have received from God were lived out amongst us? What could be possible? Now you can hear this energized yearning in what we heard Peter read from Isaiah, right? You can hear a people who are in crisis saying, maybe we wouldn't even need weapons anymore. Right? Maybe our swords, yeah, that's right, maybe our swords would become so completely obsolete, we'd have to repurpose them into something else. Maybe we'd be so sure that we don't need to defend ourselves anymore, we could spend all the time and resources we wanted on the generative tasks of life, like growing things in total peace. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Right? It's an imaginative, generative form of thinking. And I've come to believe this type of generative thinking can actually be really powerful because it connects us to a future that hasn't come to be yet. Right? Like we're here in the messy middle, struggling and grappling and worrying. And eschatological thinking draws a line from this to what's after this. It draws a line from what's now to what's next. I think in doing so, this type of thinking reinforces in our minds and our hearts that there is a next. Maybe you could use another word for that same process, connecting this, our difficult now, to a more beautiful then. That word is hope, right? It's how hope is born. When you imagine what might come, what might be possible. And maybe it's just the days we're living in that have really got me thinking a lot about eschatology, right? It just seems to make a lot of sense. Because I think we really need this kind of thinking, right? This imaginative, generative, eschatological thinking. In fact, I don't know that we can do Advent really well without it. So I guess apologies to the last 16 years of congregants who accompanied me on my preaching journey until I figure this out. I think in some ways my friends are right. We can't do Advent without this kind of thinking, because Advent is meant to be an exercise in hope. And we don't hope backward. That's not how hope works. Hope is oriented toward the future, not the past. And so while we acknowledge that Christ coming into the world was a unique and time-altering event, that's not what we're waiting for. That already happened. We're kind of waiting for the ripples of that event to alter our reality now and the reality in the days to come, right? We visit the stories around Jesus' birth because we believe they're still relevant in this moment, that we're going through a similar process now, right? That we, in our own time, are believing that the sacred is active in our midst, are anticipating that there is a hopeful future to be lived out. We are trusting that God is not done with us yet. So we practice that in Advent, and we apply those lessons to our lives now. Now, in my career, I've worked with a lot of community organizers, and they tend to use this phrase, the world as it is and the world as it should be. They say any action that we undertake in the community isn't really going to be fruitful unless we can kind of keep hold of those two things at once. We have to be able to see those to chart a clear path forward. If we can't see the world as it is, we don't know where we are. But if we can't see the world as it should be, we don't know where we're going. And I think that sort of phraseology really captures the already and not yet feeling that we have about Advent. We can't move forward unless we have both. So here we are, we're in our first week, and so I just want to take this time and tell you what we're not doing this Advent is avoiding the work of hope. I've decided you have to come along for the journey. We're not giving up on hope. I thought about it. I kind of considered all the options, and I said, no, we're not going to give up on hope. This Advent, we're not doing the lackadaisical, casual, like maybe things will get better, but I don't know how. We're going to be doing the active work of hope, of imagining new landscapes and new possibilities and new connections, of casting out our best vision of what God's active presence will make possible for us. And if we're brave, I think we're going to say out loud what the world we hope for might be like, will be like. We're going to dream up new visions of our lives and the lives of those we love and care for. I mean, it sometimes feels like we're just stumbling along the path, but when we come together in this season, what we're really doing is searching for the dim glow of the Spirit's presence to guide our steps and to trust that we're going somewhere, just like it did all those years ago, and we're doing it together. So I guess the conclusion of this lies with you, and it's just a question: how does this all end? How does this all end? That's our work, friends. Today and in the days to come, I'm glad we're doing it together. And I offer these words in the name of the God who created, redeemed, and sustained us always. Amen.